Writing queries is pretty straightforward enough. However, as you can see, it's got lots and lots of quote marks, different kinds of quote marks, double, backtick, and single quote marks, the apostrophe. This is generally, when you're writing queries in PHP, this is going to be your major area for failure, for getting it wrong. I'm going to show you now the way I approach the situation. First of all, I know as a fact that we don't need any apostrophes or quote marks around the table name, and we also don't need them around the field name, so I'm taking those out now. Okay, so field names and table names, we do not need apostrophes around. There we go. So that is fine. So there's your first task, is to take out all of those. Now we are going to use the single quotes. We don't need to escape them though with the backslash, so I'm going to take all of those backslashes out. But we do need the single quotes. And again, this is probably the area where you'll make the majority of your errors. The way I suggest you do it, what's going to happen is we're going to replace Kelly, Smith and 18 with our variables, first name, last name and age. And to do that, we're going to have to concatenate them into the string. So at each point, I need to end the string with a double quote. So that ends that part of the string. Then I'm going to have a variable. I'm going to concatenate a variable, and then I'm going to rebuild the next part of the string. So essentially what you're doing around the actual name is you're just putting some double quotes. Okay, if you remember that, then you should have few problems, if any. And what I want you to notice as well is that this 18 is also being sent as a string. Okay, we also received it back as a string. So if you want to do any mathematical work with it, you're going to have to remember that this is a string. It is not a number. Even though in the database we set it up as an integer, it should be a number, but it isn't. So there we go at the moment. That seems fine. All I've done is taken the ticks and the single quotes out of the first part, the table and the field names, and then I've taken all the backslashes out for escaping the single quote, and I have put around the actual words double quotes. So what I'm going to do next is actually replace these, Kelly, Smith and 18, with the actual variable names. So first of all, let's put this one in. So this one's going to be first name. So I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste it over Kelly. I'm going to copy that and paste it over Smith for the last name, and I'm going to copy that and paste it over the 18. We're almost there. If we try to run this at the moment, we would have a little bit of a failure because we've not actually concatenated them. All we've done is just put them in there. We will get an error. So if you remember, to concatenate a string in PHP, in Python it was a plus sign, in PHP it's just a single period. So if I put a period before and after the variables that I've put in, that now should be correct syntax for a query in PHP. All I'm going to do, one more thing, is instead of having this SQL here, I'm going to just write query and delete the line beneath it. Okay, so that was the way to build your insert query. If you remember, we went to the database and we generated the PHP code for an insert, came back into PHP, edited the values. So all we need to do really is test this. The way I'm going to test this is just to echo it out to the screen so that I can see it running. So if I give them values in my index PHP, I can test the query. So saved it. Let's go back to my sandbox. There we go. Let's think of a nice name. Eric Idle. Let's make him 70 and click submit. There we go, we have our query. Insert into person, ID, first name, last name, age, values, null, Eric, idle and 70. Now all of these three are between single quotes because they're strings. That is fine. The only thing I never explained was this value null. In other words, we didn't, when we were in the database, we didn't set a value for the ID because that was automatically generated. However, we do have to include it in our query. If we don't, it will raise an error. So we have to say, oh, we need to put the field ID, but it's not going to contain a value. We're going to let the computer work it out. So that's what all that means. So this seems to be working fine. We can now go on to actually sending that to the database and adding our records to the database.